In a dismal future, a blazing neon light from the past cuts a pathway toward tomorrow. Bounding into comics and Brett R. Smith present Escape from the Future.
Welcome to Escape from the Future, brought to you by Bounding Into Comics. I'm your host and comic veteran, Brett R. Smith, and joining me today is my buddy, Christian Toto. Christian is an award-winning journalist, film critic, and founder of HollywoodInToto.com and the host of Hollywood in Toto podcast on Radio America. Great to see you, brother.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting this is my 10-year anniversary for Hollywood in Toto. So
hey.
It's crazy.
When did that dawn on you that it was 10 years?
Late last year, I'm thinking 2024, 2014. Oh my gosh. It's been interesting. And it's been, for those out there who have an entrepreneurial bent, it takes a while. And it took me years to even get to the point where I can make it a part of my profession. So I'm here finally, but yeah, just be patient. These endeavors don't happen overnight.
Yeah. I mean, you can't microwave these things. It's like
I wish I could.
It's like an oven. You got to slow cook, or it's like a slow cooker. You got to smoke it. To get something really great.
Right.
And as well as to get really good at something. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, you just you endure and you just keep plugging along and you get better. So, so let's talk Disney. It's been a really bad couple of weeks for Disney. The bad news just continues to drop. And what we're going to cover today really isn't even the entirety of the bad news. I had to cut out some topics because these two are I think, are pretty heavy topics. Disney has an active lawsuit against them from Gina Carano, which we learned, I think, last week or the week before. And this week, Disney has been hit with a federal civil rights complaint over their enforcement of DEI. So let's first start off with Gina. Let me bring that up. All right. So you covered this. And, basically what's going on in this lawsuit, Gina is being represented by Elon Musk and ex-attorneys. Gina was terminated by Disney from the hit show The Mandalorian for so-called offensive social media posts. All the while, Mark Hamill and Pedro Pascal both have said far worse things on social media without paying any punishment for it whatsoever, largely because what they say aligns with the company's own political agenda and activism. Gina's lawyers have also cited some of Bounding Into Comics columns in their lawsuit, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Where do you see this going, and what kind of ramifications do you think this could have on the entertainment industry and actors?
Well, I'll tackle this from a certain perspective. I don't have a legal background, so that part I can't really get into in any sort of significant way. But just look at the basics of the case. Here's an actress. She's putting out stuff on social media, which is not incendiary, which is not aggressive, which is not violent, which is not beyond the realm in any capacity. But it was politically and culturally not what Disney wants to share. And so for that, she was in the spotlight. She was being harassed by the company. She's talked about this, and they wanted her to shut up, and she wouldn't shut up. And the final straw that caused the termination is such a, to use a very professional term, nothing burger, where she was saying that the discrimination and what was going on in Nazi Germany in the 30s feels a little bit what's happening now, where people who are right of center are being, discriminated against or being othered. Are not really, you can't, trust them. You can't talk to them. I don't like Nazi analogies in general. I think that they're just too toxic in a way.
Yeah.
But we spent the last 8 years with nonstop Nazi analogies. So that argument is out the window.
Yeah.
And, but I think the bigger picture here is simple. Here was an actress on the rise. She was popular. Her character was a fan favorite. And not only was she fired, but okay, when was the last time Gina Carano had a gig within the Hollywood ecosystem? Yeah. She hasn't. She's done a movie with Robert Davi, My Son Hunter. She did a movie with the Daily Wire. Those are outside of Hollywood, outside the system. But basically, this ended her professional Hollywood career.
Right.
It's so unfair.
Mhm.
It's so cruel. And again, the legally, I don't know where she stands, but she heeded the call of Elon Musk, who said on X, hey, if you've been discriminated against for politics, if you've had your freedom of speech, usurped, I'm here. And
Mhm.
that's how this happened. So it's a fascinating case. Disney has big lawyers. I never bet against them, but it is fascinating. And you mentioned before that Pedro Pascal and Mark Hamill have said worse, and that's true. And they face no repercussions in any way, shape, or form. But Bette Midler has said worse too, and she was hired by Disney Plus for the Hocus Pocus sequel,
True.
and she
Yeah.
continues to work, regularly
Mhm.
without any professional blowback. And I don't think that she should have that blowback.
Right.
But she said some horrible things about Senator Rand Paul, basically cheering on the neighbor who viciously attacked the senator, hurt him.
Mhm.
He was significantly injured. And, and she's cheering that on. That's cheering on violence that
Right.
you could say is maybe inspiring other people to commit violent acts. But
Mhm.
nothing happens to her because Senator Rand Paul is on the right. And so it's okay to do all those things and say all those things about, against him.
Mhm.
The one wrinkle here is that we're seeing this newer movement where if you're extremely pro-Israel and aggressively anti-Palestinian, that you could also face consequences as well.
Right.
I think I'm flipping that, but Susan Sarandon said something pretty obtuse about Jewish people,
Right.
and she's been pro-Palestine and from the river to the sea, and
Right.
so she lost her agent for that. And of course, Melissa Barrera from the Scream franchise lost her gig because she was very anti-Israel. So listen, these are fuzzy areas,
Yeah.
but you can't. You need some consistency here for
Yeah.
sure.
Exactly.
And I don't even know if I would agree with those actors getting canceled for their ugly comments about Israel. I mean, we are Americans. We have the right to free speech.
Yeah.
Having said that, if an actor went on a podium and started saying, anti-black things, I think we'd all be A-okay with them not working again in the immediate future. So there are a lot of gray areas. It's complicated, but the bottom line is what Gina Carano said wasn't cruel. It wasn't mean. It wasn't vicious. It certainly wasn't anti-Semitic, as was alleged. And I think she has a case.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of Noah Schnapp, who is the one of the stars on Stranger Things.
Mhm.
When he tweeted out a bunch of pro-Israel stuff after the Hamas attack, and was basically kind of like, look, if you're pro-Palestinian, you're anti-Israel,
Mhm.
plain and simple. I mean, he drew a very, very hard line, and was forced to retract it all.
Hmm.
Weeks later, came out kind of I think he took down either his tweets or his Instagram posts or wherever he put it, and apologized and talked about inclusivity and the typical BS. He's just kind of doing his little apology tour.
Yeah.
But I think that blacklisting and that pressure, Gina's obviously been blacklisted. It's like you said, she hasn't had any mainstream work since.
Mhm.
And she talks about that in the tweet, is my career's been destroyed. There's nothing left.
It has been.
And she wants back. What's interesting about her lawsuit is she's asking to be reinstated and put back on the show. And I think that takes a lot of guts. I love that she did that. She's also looking for, I think, $75,000 and punitive damages. And those punitive damages is probably where that sum of what she's looking for can be very expansive. As punitive damages are typically hard to define, but at the same time, that could be a bigger number than the 75. Because the 75, I was like, that's not a lot of money, and it's certainly not what she gave up in pay for the work that she lost from The Mandalorian. Because she was slated to be in the third series, and also she was slated to have her own show, which was Rangers of the Old Republic, I believe. And people were really looking forward to that because everybody fell in love with Cara Dune. So,
and what I don't want us to forget is that for all of Hollywood's progressive thinking, and all of the actresses who talk about feminism and Barbie and the patriarchy, no one, and I mean no one, rushed to her defense when she was unfairly fired. All the feminists in Hollywood stood down, and that is to their shame. That really is to their shame. And I think that Gina, for the most part, has taken the high road, but it had to just really burn her that she was treated so badly. So when the possibility of a lawsuit came up and someone said, hey, you know, we can help you, why wouldn't she go in that direction? And I think even if she fails, she may win to a certain degree.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And this could be one of those things where they settle and you don't know exactly who got what.
And none of this is new. I mean, I keep going back to Kevin Sorbo, and unless he's lying, and I don't think he is, and no one's ever accused him of lying, he basically said around 11 or 12 years ago, he lost his agent. He lost his Hollywood career. Right. Now, Kevin Sorbo, you know, he's got strong opinions, but I've never heard anything that he said to be vicious or cruel or really out of bounds. He's just a right-leaning guy who happens to be a Christian. And for that, he lost his career. It wasn't like, you know, at least with Roseanne, what she said was racially charged. It was dumb. That one tweet about the Obama administration official, Valerie Jarrett.
Right.
Okay, at least you can point to that and say, okay, she said this. That's why she's banned from society. I don't think there's ever been anything like that with Kevin Sorbo, where he said something so gross that you can say, okay, whatever you think about him, he did this, and that's worth punishment. I don't think that was the case. I've met him. He seems like a pretty bright guy, pretty a regular Joe, and I say that in a very good way.
Sure.
It's just radically unfair. And listen, I talk to artists all the time, and these are lesser known artists who you don't know their names, who are deathly afraid of me saying that they're conservative in public, which I don't. Obviously, I hide their views because I'm respecting their privacy. But this blacklist has been going on for years now, and no one cares.
Yeah, I mean, for all the left's chatter about McCarthyism, it's happening. It's happening right now, and I didn't agree with it back then. I don't agree with it now.
Same.
I don't think that there's any place for that. And you know, I mean, with Roseanne being a comedian and being a firebrand, you know, she reminds me of Joan Rivers in the sense that you never knew what was going to come out of her mouth, and it could be anything, you know. And it made me think about the time that Roseanne sang the national anthem at some baseball game and then ended up spitting on the ground after she was done. I mean, the whole crowd were booing her and chiding her and going crazy. And she faced a lot of backlash over that, but she didn't lose her job. And people largely just said, that's Roseanne. She's a comedian. She's supposed to push the envelope. She's supposed to be offensive at times. Even for people who love her, sometimes she's going to say things that are offensive, but that's what you get with a comedian. That's
right. And I think with Roseanne, I think what she was trying to do is what she explained later, was she was imitating a ball player, how they spit, like that's kind of the shtick that ball players do. Yeah. They chew tobacco. They used to chew a lot of tobacco on the mound.
Yeah.
More so then than now. Yeah. And I think that she was trying to recreate that. It just, listen, it was a joke that didn't land.
Yeah.
And
that happens. That happens. You know, Carson, you know, it's funny. Somebody online was talking about the Carson two-step, which is what would happen when Johnny would have a couple of jokes or maybe 3 or 4 that would all bomb. So he would look over to Doc Severinsen and they would start playing, and Johnny would do this little two-step. He'd do this little dance and the camera would pan out and the whole audience would clap and he'd kind of bring them back. And jokes sometimes just land flat, man, but you gotta throw them out there. You know, it's like Babe Ruth. He had far more strikeouts than he had home runs. And it's a numbers game, you know, like anything else. So the other thing about Roseanne, I had no idea Valerie Jarrett was black. I mean, that was Roseanne's defense. And honest to God, I had no idea. I knew she was born in Iran or somewhere in the Mideast, but I had no idea that she was black or half black or whatever her ethnicity is. So, and I remember Roseanne saying, I didn't know she was black. Otherwise, I never would have said that, you know? Yeah. But, you know, they were gunning for her and just looking, I think, for really any excuse.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the success of the show.
She was being empathetic to Trump supportters.
Absolutely.
That was her shtick on the reboot, which was getting tons of ratings.
Yeah.
You know, what I always think is fascinating is that for one joke, for one really, let's just call it an awful tweet,
sure,
for argument's sake, ABC just lost millions of dollars.
Oh, God, yeah.
Millions.
Yeah. Easy. And when I see commercials or promos for the Connors, it's just an empty suit, man. It's a corpse walking around because she's not there. You know,
The show
it's
has went
amazing.
on for multiple years, and she's had some pretty harsh words for John Goodman.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'd say I love John Goodman. My favorite movie is Raising Arizona, which you might be able to tell. And I think here's a guy who's been working forever in Hollywood. The very least he could do is say, this woman gave me a great job and helped my career. The least I can say is, I know her. She's no racist. Back off. You
Yeah.
know what he did? He said it, but he said it like months and months later when all the damage was done.
Yeah.
And she is furious about that, and rightly so.
Well, the rest of the
John
cast
Goodman,
too.
great actor, but the rest of the cast as well. Yeah.
She's pissed off at the daughter, Melissa.
Sarah Gilbert.
Yes, Sarah Gilbert.
Mhm.
I mean, because part of what she did was she agreed to step away from the show so the show could continue on and everyone could keep their jobs. And then, on the back end of that, as the show continues on and she's killed off, which was just morbid, man. I mean,
Yeah.
what an awful way to treat the whole situation. The cast came out and just started backstabbing her and just talking all kinds of crap. So
Yeah.
she has a right to be pissed,
We wouldn't know Sarah Gilbert's name if not for Roseanne Barr. We wouldn't know it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, John certainly had, I think, movies and TV prior to the show. Revenge of the Nerds is one of them, or at least the sequel. I think he plays the football coach, and I saw him in a couple other things. But he's not the star, the superstar, because of those movies. He's a superstar because of that show and the cultural phenomenon that it was when it was airing.
And imagine if the main players, when that happened, said, I'm sorry, we're not going back to work. I know Roseanne is flawed, but she's been our colleague. She's been our friend. She's helped our careers. We are standing up for Roseanne Barr, and we don't defend what she said, and she should be punished in some capacity, but I'm not going back to work on the show if she's not there by my side.
Right.
How wonderful would that have been, and what a moment that would have been.
Well, and on top of that, 20 years ago, that would have happened because we were a much more forgiving culture back then. And there was this sense of forgiveness. And if a star or someone said something out of line that was just grossly offensive to the country, they would typically go on an apology tour and hit Phil Donahue and Oprah and all of the shows, the morning shows, and say, I'm sorry. I apologize. And they would ask for forgiveness. And we would always give it to them. Very rare. I can't think of anyone in the 80s or the 90s growing up that got blacklisted because of something offensive that they said.
Yeah.
And there was always forgiveness.
Norm Macdonald, a few years ago, he was talking, it might have been directly about this incident with Roseanne, but he said, when he worked with her on the show, I think he was a writer. I'm not sure if he was a writer in the early incarnation or the newer one, but he said she would actually go out of her way to try to hire minority writers for the sitcom. So what matters more, one vicious tweet that is offensive, or a woman who goes out of her way to reach out into a minority population, say, come write on my show. I want you by my side. That is so much more powerful. It's night and day, but yet we canceled her for that. And we ignored this. It's sickening to me.
You're going to take one joke and you're going to forget about a lifetime of service to the arts and to the the Hollywood community, to entertainment, to America, to culture,
to women. She was breaking glass ceilings for being a powerhouse behind the scenes. She ruled the roost on Roseanne in a way that women didn't rule the roost in Hollywood. Well, and also she was a blue collar heroine. She was, overweight, famously overweight. She wasn't beautiful, but she was the star of the show. So many things mattered with Roseanne's rise. And
I don't understand how all of that outweighs, or how this
that's
one
cancel
tweet
culture
outweighs all of that
culture.
Stuff.
Is no nuance, no context, no empathy, no forgiveness. It's about taking a scalp, and they got a pretty big scalp with Roseanne Barr.
Yeah, they did. And I believe that largely, like you were talking about, how the show was taking a sympathetic view to peoples who had different politics, was tapping into two shows that were huge cultural phenomenons, All in the Family and Family Ties, both of which had characters when the two shows started out, were not intended to become the stars of the show. And that being Archie Bunker and Alex P. Keaton. And for whatever reason, and I think it's a combination of the solid writing, brilliant writing on both shows, plus the star power of the talent, that alchemy that happened with those two combinations. That's what made those two characters probably the most beloved characters in America on TV at the time. And people sympathized with them, they identified with them, and they loved them. But both shows really showed that you can disagree with your family, you can disagree with people who you're closest to, the people that you love the most, and you can forgive them if you disagree with them. It's not my way or the highway, and again, I think that reflects a sense of forgiveness within the culture that's reflected through a TV show that is lost today, and I mean it's a Christian, it's a Christian centered value, this idea of forgiveness. But even for people who are secular, what about a second chance? What about a third chance? Why do we throw people away? It's just this disposable heroes. It sucks, man.
Yeah. And it's funny because today you can make a Tony Soprano or a Walter White, and we accept that, these anti-heroes who are charismatic and who we really root for, even though they're doing some very bad things.
Right.
But we couldn't do an Archie Bunker today.
Yeah.
It's a bridge too far for that. And I mention this often, we can have 16 movies about hitmen, assassins, and they're the heroes and we're rooting for them. But if you have an Archie Bunker type, then you're out of luck.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. It's so strange to me. But I think that what the network saw, what Roseanne was doing, and where the show was going from the standpoint of reintroducing forgiveness into politics, I think that was too dangerous for them. I just think that they understood that she was going to probably change the culture in ways that they didn't like. And I just think they were just looking for anything to take her out. And I think it's the same with Gina. I just think they saw somebody who is a free thinker. She's not going to be controlled. And therefore she's a gigantic threat. And the other thing about Gina is that they did send her to like sensitivity training, and she went to go get her mind right. I mean, you want to talk about like just pure, you want to talk about McCarthyism and just something that's almost like, ironically, pure Soviet. Yeah. She went to her re-education training and had to apologize to all these people of color and different genders and all this stuff. And even then that wasn't good enough for them. Yeah. So it's like they humiliate her, they take away her dignity, and you're left with somebody who has absolutely nothing to lose. And that's why I look at this lawsuit and I just think this is beautiful. This is this is not only karma, but it's also justice. And somebody's going to answer to something here. And I'm not a lawyer, but at the same time, I just look at Mark Hamill and I look at Pedro Pascal, and two guys who I like on screen. I don't particularly like them off screen, but I don't go to the movies to see who they are off screen. I go to see the characters. And I remember seeing Pedro in Narcos for the first time. He's brilliant.
He's a really good actor.
He's a really good actor, man. I think he's being oversaturated right now. That's a different topic. But I just look at their actions and their tweets and their incendiary remarks, and basically calling half the country Nazis, especially Mark. Mark's probably worse than Pedro and more vocal on Twitter.
Yeah, but, he's more consistent.
I mean, her own co-star is out there doing something that's worse than what she said, and yet he's able to skate by, and he is arguably the biggest sought after male lead in Hollywood right now.
Yeah, he hasn't suffered any repercussions.
No.
And by the way, what they said about Trump voters actually proves Gina Carano's post's point.
Yeah.
About the othering, about treating people differently, because it's okay to call Trump voters Nazis, which is as cruel a comment as you can possibly imagine, with zero proof behind it.
Yeah.
There's no proof. I mean, there may be an individual Trump voter who is a Nazi or a bigot or whatever. But blanket calling an entire group of people a Nazi without the proof to back it up is exactly what she said in her analogy that got her fired.
Let's jump over to this this federal civil rights complaint. Let me bring this up. This is Breitbart. Here we go. Is this John Nolte? No, this is David Ng. who's a great writer over at
Yeah,
Breitbart.
I like him.
So Disney hit with federal civil rights complaint over DEI alleges discrimination against white men, Christians, and Jews. So I guess at the heart of this complaint is that Disney has implemented a de facto quotas system in its hiring, which violates federal employment law. These quotas are often disguised as diversity and inclusion policies, but in many cases, Disney has listed actual percentages when it comes to hiring for its productions. And that's not only talent, but that's also who's behind the camera. It wouldn't even surprise me if this goes as deep as like craft services, which is the food that they have on the set for the actors and the crew. This complaint also cites a leaked internal Disney document that was posted by Elon Musk on X, which is pretty damning from the standpoint of actual quotas being enforced at the House of Mouse. What did you think of that graphic Elon posted and the details Disney is using as far as race and sex in the quotas in their hiring practices?
I mean, it shouldn't shock me, and it didn't shock me because it's all we hear. It's all we see. It's just saying the obvious at this point. And, Adam Carolla, maybe a year or two ago, basically said when it comes to what's going wrong with the culture right now, I'm paraphrasing, the lawyers will save us. We all joke about lawyers and blah, blah, blah. What's the 100 lawyers at the bottom of the sea? It's a good start. Ha, ha, ha. But what we're seeing now is when Kyle Rittenhouse is attacked unfairly, he sicked his lawyers on them. And when Nick Sandmann was attacked unfairly, he sicked his lawyers on them. And now we've got people who are being actively discriminated against, and they're sicking lawyers on them. And I think this Disney case, I mean, this could be blockbuster level revelations here. And if they're ruling against Disney, because how many other companies are doing exactly the same thing?
They are
commonplace. I'm cordial with a comedian named Tyler Fisher. And he's suing his agency because they basically said to him, "You're a white straight male. We can't get your work." And he caught it on tape. He recorded it and he played it for me. And now there's a law. I don't know what the status of the lawsuit is. These things take forever. But, that's what's happening behind the scenes. And then, Film Threat, which is a wonderful website and podcast, they've been doing all this work behind the scenes, both with the Mouse House and the D-Files, and getting all the people who are speaking to them anonymously about what's going on at Disney, and also looking at the Writers Guild and having all the DEI style machinations going on there. And one of the phrases that they say is commonly spoken of in Hollywood now is, male and pale is stale.
That's right.
Now, just imagine being a white male worker working in Hollywood and hearing that. It's bigoted, it's offensive, it's wrong. And again, I would think lawyers across the country are, getting ready. Let's go. Just give me the signal.
Oh yeah.
Who knows? Well, I mean, my gosh, imagine the fury of countless lawsuits.
Pale, male, and stale. Reacher, Terminalist, Deadpool, Wolverine, Beekeeper. I mean, these are all movies, TV shows that are either already successful or we anticipate them to be hugely successful. Terminalist has got a sequel. They have a prequel coming, The Dark Wolf. Deadpool is Jack Ryan. I mean, how many out there? What a joke, man, because obviously that's not true. I mean, it's patently not true, but even from the standpoint of it just being complete bullshit. I mean, how many people out there are losing job opportunities because a bunch of people with PhDs in DEI and ESG, or maybe it's Vanguard and BlackRock who are coercing all of these companies and studios and corporations to do this stuff because they do business with them, because Larry Fink's the guy that runs BlackRock is a big, advocate of this stuff. There's a video leaked of Bob Iger recently talking about this, and he's all for it. He's 100% behind it. And it's interesting because when I watched that video of Bob and he's talking about January 6th and taking a stand and all this stuff, and how even taking a stand, against things that are political aren't really political. Either way, two things. My two takeaways from that video of Bob Iger was white guilt, massive white guilt. Something Rush Limbaugh used to call affluenza, which is guilt about being successful and having a lot of money. So I guess there's three things.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Three takeaways. Yeah, right. My three takeaways here, because there's another one, and that's this white savior complex. The hubris of this man who thinks that he can undo all of these perceived wrongs in his mind that this country represents, in his mind, is just staggering. Who is this guy? Where does he come from? Why does he think he's the guy that has to make these decisions and deny people who
look like him
on the merits deserve the job?
Yeah,
but because they look like him.
He stepped down, by the way.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
he's white. He's male. He's stale.
There's not somebody of color that could run Disney. You're telling me that there's not anyone out there who could run Disney right now of color. I don't care if they're black or if they're Hispanic or what. But obviously, there is somebody competent out there who could do a better job than Bob Iger, and they could be a person of color. So why not step down, and do the right thing? I mean, if he feels, so strongly about these things, then why doesn't he step down and give the reins to a person of color and maybe even a woman, right?
One of the revelations of the D Files, which again is from a film thread, I highly recommend you check out those podcasts and read the investigative stories. They talk about how they're basically pushing out the older white males who have, solidified Disney, who have epitomized Disney, who has created that Disney aesthetic, that wonderful animation look. And one of the things they said is, well, what they could have done is say, hey, we're going to recruit some young minority members, some more women who are a little rough around the edges. They need the training, and then have these older employees mentor them and guide them and teach them and have them work together. And then it's the best of both worlds. You get, more people of color have opportunity, and yet the older animators still get work. They're still respected. And then you have a new generation, which is more diverse, and they've got that Disney touch, that magic, that look that's so endemic of Disney product. But no.
Well, and all of that knowledge of the look and the feel and everything aesthetically that is Disney, only those guys can pass that stuff down. That's not something you can learn or just kind of pick up. You're absolutely right. Keep those guys, help them to teach the new stable of talent the Disney way.
Everybody wins too.
As only they can, right? And that legacy continues from an artistic standpoint. So this whole thing got me thinking about Mark Cuban and Elon Musk, duking it out on X about DEI. Elon Musk is against DEI and ESG. Mark Cuban thinks that there's something useful there, apparently, although he's got kind of a convoluted understanding, I think, of what he's talking about, and it's kind of a lesson in that just because you have a lot of money and you've made some good decisions, you've been in the right place at the right time, doesn't always make you right about everything. In this back and forth between Elon Musk and Mark Cuban, the EEOC federal commissioner actually jumped in. And it's funny because over the years, I have tagged EEOC in a lot of threads which revolve around discrimination of hiring or discrimination within hiring based on race and sex. And they're a federal agency, and apparently, and I actually talked to a lawyer about this. I asked him, I said, how come the EEOC doesn't jump into these things? And he said, well, the EEOC doesn't really jump into anything. You have to file a complaint, or you have to have an active lawsuit and then give them a heads up, and that's when they get involved. So this isn't really an active agency. It's more of a reactive one for some reason. I don't know why, other than it's just another, stuffy bureaucracy. But anyway, federal commissioner fires back at Mark Cuban for diversity claim, delivers warning about DEI, more problems. Yeah, this Andrea Lucas, who is the commissioner, I have no idea who appointed her, but she does not seem like somebody who is left of center. So I'm just going to read through this. Lucas told Fox News Digital, certainly there's a lot of confusion over DEI programs and what you can do with respect to race and sex or other protected characteristics. And Cuban's viral tweet illustrates the misunderstanding that as long as you don't use race or sex as a dispositive factor for the sole factor, it's okay to use it as a plus factor. That's just fundamentally wrong, she added. I only hire the person that will put my business in the best position to succeed, Cuban posted on X earlier this week. And yes, race and gender can be part of the equation. I view diversity as a competitive advantage. Just bizarre.
Yeah, what does that even mean? And also, if you're dealing one-on-one with a person at a Mark Cuban corporation, let's just say the person's a Black female, you're dealing with them directly. How does her diversity impact the transaction? It might be that she's smart, that she's capable, that she's wise, that she knows how to complete the task at hand. That's all great things. But just her skin color and her being a female, how does that really change or help? I don't understand that.
I don't know either, man. I mean, you know, growing up in the 80s and 90s, women who wanted to, you know, get into maybe more of the boys' game, but, you know, they wanted to get into the job market. They would typically say things like, and it was the same with gays. You know, I want people to see me as more than just a woman, or more than just who I go to bed with. I'm much more than that. You know, that's this one part of who I am, but I'm capable of so much more, and I can do the job for you better than anyone else, regardless of whether I'm gay or whether I'm a woman. Now that seems to be, you know, the identifying characteristic that everyone pushes forward. I'm a woman. Yeah. I'm gay. So that's why I should get the job. It's just bizarre. But so the EEOC commissioner responded to Cuban and said he is dead wrong on the law and told Fox News Digital that Cuban's thinking opens him up to a potential lawsuit. She said, if any employer, whether private or public, uses race or sex or any protected characteristic, particularly race or sex, as a factor in their decision-making process for an employment decision, then they violated Title VII. An employee that's been harmed can file a complaint with the EEOC, and then they can get the right to sue letter. They can file in federal court. She wanted to say that the idea of diversity quotas, which may have been a controversial issue with many prominent companies and governments in recent years, said that while hiring goals are not prohibited by the law, quotas can run afoul of the law. A goal per se is not prohibited, but there's lots of ways you can end up violating the law or having it be used as evidence of violating the law if it indicates that you're using race or sex or another protected characteristic as a factor in your decision making. Quotas absolutely are a direct violation of Title VII. So if you're indicating that goal is really an actual requirement or a hard target, then you will be hiring this amount of people, or you will be promoting this amount of people. That's absolutely a facial violation of Title VII.
And by the way, maybe I'm being naive about this, but two things. One, listen, Mark Cuban, I'm sure, is arrogant. I feel like at least he's approaching this with an open-ish mind, and I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's misled. I think he's naive. But just the fact that he's even having these back and forth exchanges is often more than most people on the hard left engage in. They'd rather shut you down.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, they just call you a racist and you know, block you. But
that's right.
But you know, without Mark being open to discussion about this on X, you would never have the commissioner from the EEOC actually weighing in and saying exactly what the federal laws are and where he's potentially going wrong. But she went on to say, so a lot of people hear the words diversity, equity, and inclusion and think, well, all of those sound like great concepts. I like fairness. Who doesn't like fairness? I like equality. What's wrong with equality? But the reason that there's been a shift from focusing on equal employment opportunity to equity is for a reason. Words mean something, and equity and equality are not the same concept. Lucas continued, I'd like to remind people we are the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. We are not the Equal Outcomes Commission. That is just a fundamentally different mission. There may be different outcomes at different points for different employees. That's not mandated by the law for everyone to arrive at the exact same place. What matters is that employers are treating all of their employees the same without relying on skin color or their sex or other protected characteristics.
And
So
also, what I
Dude.
like about the debate is that people on the left and the right and the middle, people who are apolitical, they're seeing this go on Twitter, millions
Right.
of people maybe. And that's helpful too. And they see both sides. And they can.
Oh
sort
yeah,
of,
no, this is huge. That's why I'd love to know who appointed this lady, because she's not only following the law, which is obviously her job as commissioner at the EEOC, but she's also, as they like to say on the left, speaking truth to power.
That's right.
Anyway, smart people cannot disagree about some basic principles of law. And those principles are: there's no such thing as reverse race discrimination. That's just discrimination. Discrimination based on race is always illegal. It doesn't matter which group is being referenced. It doesn't matter which group is doing the discriminating or being discriminated against. When people focus on equity-focused solutions, they are not actually fixing existing discrimination. And they may be trying to fix existing discrimination by introducing more discrimination. But a cycle of discrimination is never going to fix anything. Two wrongs will never make a right. Something I say all the time these days. Lucas went on to say, if people are concerned about barriers for particular groups in our society, equal opportunity is the way to go forward. And there are many ways to address and eliminate barriers that people may face in hiring, promotion, firing, that are entirely race neutral and actually get at the problem. So I'm really concerned that DEI ends up introducing more problems than it actually solves. I love it. I love
the
it.
odds. Oh, wait, 100%.
And it's the federal government. I mean, how often are we sitting here praising the feds and praising Fedzilla and saying right on? But hey, the law is the law, man. And the law is pretty awesome. And I don't know when this stuff came into effect. Is this like the 60s or what? But again, these are probably old statutes. They've probably been around a while, at least probably since the 60s or the 70s, I would bet. And so how bad is it today? Exactly. How much do we have to fight for? Do we need more laws on the books? I don't think so. That all sounds pretty good to me. And she sounds like a dynamite commissioner, man. So
yeah, she's one to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah.
She may be short-lived at her position.
That's possible. Yeah, they might be looking to replace her soon, because I mean, she's flying in the face of everything that Biden's doing, like with the military and everything. And it's like you said. I mean, if the largest pop culture company in the world, the biggest pop culture icon being Disney, in America at least, if they're doing this and they're doing it pretty feverishly, as evidenced by that graphic, how many other companies? Amazon, P&G. I mean, gosh, I mean, this could go. We know Bud Light was, obviously.
And all it takes is one whistleblower within each company to anonymously send this to a news outlet or someone of trust. Right. Say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Look at it.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I mean, this thing with the EEOC, I just think to myself, this is probably going to be included in the America First legal complaint that they're filing with Disney. I mean, why not include this? The law is pretty straight up and down. So it'd be interesting to see where that goes. America First Legal is Stephen Miller, by the way, which is kind of funny. But, I like seeing conservatives going on offense rather than always being on defense. They're taking the fight to the left, similar to what DeSantis did in Florida with Disney. Yeah. They recently dropped that lawsuit. So that was a loss for them. I think even Bob Chapek said it was a mistake, to pick this fight.
And also Christopher Rufo has been very aggressive on the culture front from a right of center point of view. And if you don't know his name, you probably know his results, because he's getting a lot of stuff done on the educational front.
Yeah, he and Matt Taibbi are just absolute badasses, man. You want to talk about the old school gumshoe reporters and stuff like that? Those two guys, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sadly, we're out of time. Christian, go ahead and give everyone your social media coordinates so they know where to find you and what you're up to.
Well, my website is hollywoodintoto.com. The podcast is the Hollywood in Toto podcast. And on Twitter or X, at Hollywood in Toto.
It's a great podcast. I listened to the Critical Drinker interview you had, and that was a lot of fun. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage everyone to check out your podcast. It's a lot of fun. What's the best way our viewers can support you?
Share my stuff. Subscribe to the podcast. share a review on iTunes. And also not just me, but people like you, people in this space, go to Film Threat, subscribe to their podcast. They're really doing great work.
Yeah.
They're not political, but they are for free speech. They're anti-woke. And I think all these different voices are getting more and more powerful, but they need your help. So spread the word, share when you can, use social media. We are not helpless. We can all play a part in this.
For more videos like this one, subscribe to Bounding into Comics channel on YouTube and Rumble. Also, make sure to like this video and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.